You're listening to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis, a podcast designed to explore the personal mission of everyday leaders. Hear from men and women who are making a difference in their corner of the world and discover what keeps them on mission. Welcome to On Mission. My name is Matt Davis, and today my guest is a good friend, Mr. Phil Price. He is a Maranatha alumnus, and he is back at Maranatha teaching in our math department in the Applied Sciences Division, and particularly that field of mathematics that everyone loves so very much. He and his wife, Kathleen, also a Maranatha alumnus, reside here in Watertown, Wisconsin. They have 3 adult sons and 1 daughter-in-law so far, and that is a great blessing. His first job was as a 10-year-old boy delivering the daily morning newspaper for the Owatonna People's Press, which sounds like a communist publication. I don't know if you knew that at the time, but right there in southern Minnesota. So maybe it was a communist newspaper. Who knows? 10-year-old, so child labor, like right there from the start.
Yes. To be fair, my older brother, Steve, he's 2 years older than I am, so he was mainly in charge of the route. I was kind of helping him.
You just got tricked into helping your older brother. Yeah. And then his first real job after college was at Augusta Christian Schools in Augusta, Georgia, which we know because last week was the Masters tournament. And, of course, more famous for the golf course than for the fine Christian schools that are in the area, of which you served as the high school math teacher, as an assistant football coach there at the Christian school. That's pretty nice. And an assistant basketball coach as well. He's a smart man. His favorite meal is his wife's stromboli, all right? And that's pretty cool. He enjoys jogging, which I don't understand that, but he does enjoy it. He attends his son's events, which there are many here at Maranatha to enjoy and to see them involved with, watching sports, and the Daily Minute Cryptic Puzzle. What is that?
That's something our oldest son, Nathaniel, kind of got us into that. It's a Facebook puzzle that you can solve every day, and it's like crossword clues, for a crossword puzzle, but there's also like hidden meanings and things you have to uncover. So it's a good exercise for me. It's not
a math thing. It's
more of a word thing than a math thing.
Oh, but, wow. Nice.
Other members of my family are much better at it than I am, but it's
you play along like a good dad. Let them beat you every once in a while.
Yes.
His favorite sports teams are, of course, besides the Maranatha SaberCats, the Minnesota Vikings and Twins, the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers, which I don't like the Golden Gophers' chance against the SaberCat, to be honest with you. That would be a light snack. And, of course, as everyone else around here these days, Alabama Crimson Tide basketball. Yes. You played with Nate Oates for a while, didn't you?
I played a couple sports with Nate. And
in high school, maybe, and in college?
High school. He's 3 years younger than I am.
Okay, so just overlapping like the junior year, freshman type thing. Nice.
So we were, teammates with him, and actually worked the same job as he did as security guards over at Bethesda. So for a brief window of time, I was actually his supervisor. So
you take credit for all of his success, and you taught him everything he needs to know about leadership and important life principles
in 6 months or whatever that was.
That's right.
However long that lasted.
Well, welcome to the podcast. We're looking forward to a good conversation today. We've known each other since college, and I can remember you're a couple years ahead of me too, and yet I think Kathleen might be the same age or like right around that. And so you were showing tremendous interest in this undergrad student, I believe, at the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember.
My memories of you and Kathleen surround mostly the library because people don't realize you're such a studious guy. I thought you were a very studious guy, but it turns out you were just hanging out with Kathleen, as the young people say. So.
Yes, absolutely. And when I actually tell my classes, I still remember the first place I saw Kathleen was in the library, which is now Burkhart Hall, and she was standing there next to the card catalog looking for a book, and I was smitten.
What were you doing in there? Did you go in there on a dare?
Yeah. Every once in a while, I found myself in there, but
I never did. Like I like to read. I tried to have good grades, but man, the library was not my place to hang out. I did not like that.
As an off-campus student, it fit it fit fine. I'm trying to think of other places we had back then. We didn't have the coffee shop.
Nope.
I guess we had the snack shop. Down
that
below.
was downstairs. Yeah, I'm not sure how many times I ever went there either.
Yeah, but I knew if I was going to try to get stuff done, I probably wouldn't be too productive down
Well,
there.
that's why I never went to the library. I was never actually trying to get anything done. All right, I was trying to avoid getting things done. Well, that's a story for another day, but we do have that in common. And in fact, you played quite a few sports here, high school and college. What all were you involved with?
The privilege of being involved in football and with coaches. My high school coach was Rich Akins.
Wow, legend.
And my college coach was, of course, my dad, which was an amazing privilege.
Yeah.
And was able to play 2 years with my older brother. And then I also, in the academy, I wrestled under Doug Richards was my first coach.
Really?
And then Mark Ravis came after him. And then baseball coaches in the academy were Bill Mulder, Greg Winiger, and then my dad. My dad actually coached some academy baseball. And then college baseball, had the privilege of playing for Jerry Terrell.
Wow.
Great man in our Hall of Fame.
Yep.
So just really blessed with godly coaches. Wrestling, I didn't get to wrestle directly for Ben Peterson, but he was very influential, of course, in the academy wrestling program, and so I appreciate his testimony.
Why would you? I mean, you've spent thousands and thousands of hours then practicing, competing in all these different, very diverse range of sports, mostly involving combat. I noticed. Are you a violent person? You seem so quiet and whatever. But I think there must be another side, unleashed. But you.
Well, you had brothers.
Yeah.
I had brothers, and you know what that does to the competitive side.
Right. But I found it interesting when you described your experience, just in even saying what sports that you played, you immediately related that to who the coaches were. Was that a really important part of that experience in your?
Absolutely, yeah. The leadership, the godly example, knowing how to lead men. Sacrificing, just so many things I could think about as these guys, the joy of the Lord. I mean, these guys loved what they did, and that just really was a big lesson to me. And so definitely the leaders. We have a very good heritage of coaches and current coaches as well. I appreciate the example of our current coaches.
That's the part. Even having sons that are competing, you've got Ben right now playing on the basketball team, and Mike's been a captain on the soccer team for 4 years, and sadly, kind of at the end of his collegiate experience. And it's awesome to see coaches that are reinforcing the things that we've been trying to do as parents in raising our young people up to be godly and Christian men, whatever that concept, kind of passing that along to them is a big deal. So I kind of know you most of all as a football guy. Is that a fair thing? I mean, of all the sports, do you kind of most identify with football because your dad was so connected to the program and all those years? I'm sure you did every job on the sideline up until you had the chance to compete yourself, and
it was
around the game forever.
It was such a privilege to grow up. I mean, my earliest memories of fall days are at the Pillsbury football field or some other field in southern Minnesota somewhere. And then as I got older, we got to be like the water boys and help with stats or whatever, just on the sideline. And it was like having 40 or 50 big brothers, because the guys on the football team would, a lot of them were very patient and gracious with us little, brats running around the sideline, and they just...
Well, they had to be nice to you. They were looking for playing time from the coach. If you're mean to the coach's son, that doesn't get you in the ball game.
Yes, very true. So...
But you've been in and around that environment in that particular sport really your whole life up to that point, and then you get to actually put on the pads and suit up and go out there and do battle on the football field. What position did you end up playing the most?
I was in college. I was a running back for 2 years, and then a linebacker for 2 years.
Nice.
And so
now, when I was here, we had the Florida boys. Did you ever play with those guys, or were you kind of overlapping at all?
My last year, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, my junior year is when the first Florida boy came.
I don't know who the first one was.
Daniel Davis.
Daniel was? Okay.
He's
no relation.
He's a state representative in Florida or something. He's been in politics, but anyway, that he was like the first one, and then the next year, his friend TJ came.
TJ Ward.
And then I think the next year after that was when Travis and James came. I think those were the four that I remember.
Yeah, they hung out and went everywhere together, so they kind of just got lumped in as the Florida boys.
Yeah.
But they were good football players too. Helped the program a little bit.
Yes.
What was the high point during your career? Was there a pinnacle that you kind of look back on and say those were the glory days, man?
Well, I was very thankful to be my freshman year. We won the Upper Midwest Athletic Conference. We were the co-champions with Northwestern up in Minneapolis, and I had the privilege of being on that team. We were 7-2. We won the last game of the season. We had to beat Northwestern across town over on their field, and we beat them like 30-20 or something like that. And just remember the celebration after that. That was kind of like the clincher for the championship, and just getting to carry my dad off the field of thing. And it was just a great memory. My older brother was a quarterback. Tom Allen was our middle linebacker.
Oh, wow.
And, and there's just a great group of guys. Jeff Estes was one of the captains.
Defensive,
Was a very, very good defensive back, but great leader. I think of guys like Todd Terrell was also one of the captains. We very blessed with awesome leadership on that team.
Yeah.
Guys that love the Lord, but also very passionate competitors. And so
if you can learn to bring power under control, that's one of the most successful things a man can do. Anyone, really. I guess the Bible calls that the concept of meekness, but there's an interesting element of that I think athletics can help to teach a person to do, to control those passions, not to dismiss them. They're important. And to generate power, to be able to be powerful and strong and have the technique and the skill on the field, but to apply it within the boundaries of fair play and all of that. And I think in our culture, we're having a harder and harder time doing that. And I think part of that has to do with the downplaying of some of the sports that are, frankly, more combative in nature, but when done correctly, it's not an out-of-control kind of chaos, but rather a concerted effort. Like you're talking about that whole team, and when the whole team is bought into the concept, it works.
Yeah.
If everybody's just doing their own thing for their own stats, we're not going to win ball games or championships. Yeah. And it's neat to recall those days when it all clicked, when it all worked, and that success was actually achieved and realized.
We were very blessed, and so many individuals come to mind. I also would really want to mention Dr. Malmanger was a very important mentor to me in the classroom, teaching many of my math classes, but also was our defensive coach, defensive coordinator at the time, and was right alongside my dad coaching for almost all the years my dad was a head coach.
Yep.
And so he was a very faithful laborer for the Lord, and great memories from him. And also Clayton Morrison as a leader and a defensive coach. He coached a lot of years with my dad and Dr. Malmanger. So that trio is an amazing group. And when the Lord led us back here, I had the opportunity to join that trio
Wow.
as a coach. And, it was just...
That is a weird feeling, isn't
it?
Like these guys are on your Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
So now you're supposed to be like working together on stuff, and every once in a while they ask you what you think, and you're like, everything I think came from you. What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
That's awesome. Now, you also played baseball, and I happen to know that you were pretty successful on the baseball diamond as well, and have actually held some records for Maranatha baseball that have stood until last week. That you were the home run leader for Maranatha baseball since, I don't know what year you think you probably set that record. Was it 94 or 95?
I think it was the spring of 94, I think, was my last year playing.
All right, so 1994, which there's not a student on this campus that was even born then, Phil. That's how old you are.
I know.
I mean, we.
Yes. We're in this together now. Come on.
And so you set that record, and it stood for decades. All right, decades. And then some whippersnapper had the audacity last week, all right, to eclipse the home run record. And we're actually pretty proud of Teddy, all right, give him a shout out on the podcast. He's
Teddy,
a good kid.
He is. You talk about a guy who is here wanting to serve the Lord and preparing for ministry, passionate about everything he does. But, on the baseball field, man, he can hit it a mile. I mean,
he's a good pitcher, too. He's like the Babe Ruth of Maranatha baseball. All right, don't tell him I said that. We cut that part out, all right? I'll go right to his head. But, no, he's a good guy. And, you couldn't have happened to a nicer guy,
Yeah, well, very well deserved. And
he didn't tell you about it, did he?
Well, walked into the building yesterday, and I actually ran into him, saw him there, and he said, well, I'm sorry I had to do that to you, Mr. Price. And so...
So we had a humble brag, he apologized for breaking your record. Okay. Yeah. He probably got his picture taken for his Hall of Fame plaque already picked out, No, that's great. And the team is good this year. It's been fun to watch those guys.
They're doing an awesome
job. Coach Faithful's doing a great job, Coach Milkey, and of course they're building on the foundation from Coach Garrison.
Yeah.
And it's neat to see the program succeeding the way it has. Spring sports are tough around here.
They are,
because we often put spring in air quotes. They get a couple of weeks here at the end where they get some nice weather and go out and play all their games in 4 days.
One of my last games in 1994 was over at Northwestern when they were still here as a college, which is the Luther Prep baseball field now. But we started the doubleheader, started the game, and all of a sudden, snowflakes.
What? Oh, no.
And so, we keep playing for a little bit, and I'm catching, and one of their batters hits a foul pop up like right around home plate, and I'm looking up. I'm trying to locate the baseball in the midst of these snowflakes.
Oh, no.
And I don't think I caught it, to be honest with you.
No. How could you? I mean, what in the world?
So,
that's terrible.
But we did have some good days, but it's definitely you layer up when you play here. You layer up and you kind of embrace it. You learn to embrace it.
The beautiful weather comes right after graduation.
Right. How often is graduation weekend? I mean, the campus is pristine. You got the grounds crew does an amazing job getting it ready, and but you're right. It's like
the last day.
Up until then, it's like.
The students aren't here to enjoy it all summer. We are, we love it, but get to go out and play church softball in some pretty nice weather, but nothing that matters too much. Oh, that's great. Well, we've kind of relived the glory days a little bit. And I'm sorry that your home run record got eclipsed, but it was only a matter of time, I guess.
Yes.
But
he's going to go, if he stays healthy, look out. He can.
Yeah, he could set the one that will last even more decades than yours. But maybe it's the new technology. You didn't have
that
bats
had
like
to be.
This. Yeah, clearly. I mean, we were playing with wooden bats back in the day, right? No, maybe not.
Wooden bats or very old aluminum bats.
Yeah, for sure. It didn't make the same sound as it did back in our day. That thunk,
Yeah.
Nowadays it's more of a ping. So, well, I always ask everybody a question to kind of kick off this phase of the podcast, and that is, what is your mission in life? And as you sit here today and think about that, how would you articulate your mission?
Well, it's a privilege to serve the Lord, and my mission would be to glorify God through serving Him as a local church member, as a Christian man, as a husband, as a father, as a son-in-law, father-in-law. I want to make sure I just think of all of the different roles that the Lord allows us to play, and just to bring glory to Him, seeking to be Christ-like in my actions and reactions to things. I think of a couple of key verses. One that when I was young adult, high schoolish, Psalm 71:16, I will go in the strength of the Lord. I will make mention of thy righteousness, even of thine only. And so just the importance of going in God's strength, no matter what we're doing, to not assume that we're just good enough, strong enough on our own. And then more recently, over the past several years, Psalm 90, verse 12, so teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Those have been a couple of...
Of course, as a math teacher, I think it's obligatory that you throw in the numbers verse.
Have a number verse, yes.
Teach us to number our days, add them up, and divide them. And find their least common factors. It's in the Greek, the Hebrew.
Right. All of that. All of that.
What? How on earth do you, as you think about that, which is pretty broad and pretty very biblically based, very appropriate to the Christian walk, how does that play out in your life, though? Because you are a math teacher at a Christian college. You get to teach a particular discipline that requires a high degree of intelligence and diligence in terms of understanding it and teaching it. And so how would you reflect on the way that your mission informs the way that you go about your vocation?
Yes, I view math as, God, the way God has given us to understand life, understand different facets of life, and wanting to represent what God has given us accurately and in a way that's pleasing to Him. We think about in statistics, we think about risk, and we talk about, one of the things I talk about is the uncertainties of life in there, and so a concrete way that I can try to glorify God or represent what He's created is to just talk about, in life there's a lot of uncertainty, as we talk about in this class. We use a lot of words like likely and should happen. There aren't many. We don't usually use the word guarantee in that class.
Right.
But I try to contrast that with, God's promises are 100%. We can be assured that God will keep His promises. And, we, in the midst of all this uncertainty over here, we know that God keeps His promises, and, that can be a blessing to us. And so looking for opportunities like that to talk about, the discipline and what are some ways that we can compare, and what do the numbers or whatever it is we're studying, what do they tell us about the God who created them? And not every lesson or concept is easy, is easy to make that happen, but
sure. Well, sometimes I think maybe it gets a little bit falsely kind of levered in there, like
a
little bit mechanical. But what is the relationship between mathematics as a discipline and the concept of truth as a reality in the world? Is there a connection between those disciplines?
Yeah, in math, a lot of math we have theorems, we have things that are proved to be true that, go through a series of logic statements, and there's no contradiction in any of these statements, and so we can understand truth that way, that God has given us logical ability to think and follow these proofs and see, yes, if this is true, then so is this. If this is true, so is this. And here's the conclusion.
Well, it's kind of hard to be a postmodernist in mathematics. And maybe you've had some students try that on you when they're arguing points on a test. Well, that's your truth, Mr. Price, but
right.
My truth is that this answer comes out differently. But we have a society that wants to reject the idea that there is such a thing as the truth, that it even exists. And then here we have this entire discipline, this scientific discipline that demonstrates in a universal language of mathematics, which doesn't matter if you speak English or Chinese, is the truth.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting even now as we discover some ancient cultures were quite a bit more advanced, so to speak, in their technology and their understanding of these principles than we gave them credit for, because we just didn't understand how they might have illustrated or articulated them. But we see that in their design, we see it in their architecture that's even survived millennia. And it just, to me, that illustrates that while theology ideas can change about God, while ideas can change about ethics, morality, literature, and language, they do not change. There's a constancy to mathematics that while we may discover some new relationships, they're never going to undermine what we've already established and proven as, quote, reality. And are you finding that to be true, or even within the academic discipline, there's probably some movement out there. There's probably some math department at some state school where they're trying to disprove the constancy and objectivity of mathematics. But I can only imagine what our world would look like if we didn't have predictable, consistent truth when it comes to the numbers, right?
Yeah. Yes. And we have agreed upon principles. We can develop things logically. There's things that are ongoing in terms of people trying to prove things, or people using supercomputers to try and come up with the next biggest prime number, or more digits of pi, or there's ongoing things with that. But then there's the principles that have been around for centuries that go back to the Greeks and right. that are still true today. They're still So
I think it's fascinating. Have you been to the Ark Encounter?
Yes.
I haven't been there yet personally, but do they have a exhibit on there called like Noah's Library on the Ark? Have you seen that? And the idea is there's this ancient knowledge that was learned and known and recorded prior to the flood, and that Noah kind of had collected as much of that as he could and brought it onto the ark. Because otherwise, how do we even know, what the history that God's Word gives us from the pre-flood eras and things like that? But we have a tendency to think of those ancient so-called civilizations as being so primitive and like they're cavemen and they didn't know, fire or the wheel, things like that. But in reality, they are reflecting the mathematical principles that have existed through all that time. Yeah. Now, when you get into the world of statistics, as you mentioned, that's another one of the classes that you like to have in the rotation of your teaching portfolio. Now we can start talking about what to do with the data, right? And that's probably where more of the arguments come up. And they say there's lies and other kinds of lies and statistics, right? and when it comes down to it, how to interpret those things have certainly been used to manipulate. But I've always thought about it like the reason statistics are so effective at manipulating people is that they look at mathematics as reliable. Mm-hmm. And so when you use something, you're trying to bolster your argument, you use statistics because it's kind of this irrefutable science that you're pointing to that supposedly backs up your position. But man, nowhere is math manipulated more than in the wrong use of statistics. So how do you approach that with your students when you're going through the how? Then you got to ask yourself, okay, yeah, but the why of what you use this for is also important.
Yeah. One of the things I have my students do is in statistics, introductory statistics class, is read the book How to Lie with Statistics. And that is to raise awareness. It's not a how-to book, okay? We're not trying to demonstrate this, but we're trying to raise awareness and prepare the students to be able to, it gives a lot of good examples of manipulated data. It's a very old book. It's from the 1950s, but it's a classic, and it just points out to the students, okay, you've got this knowledge, and now you need to look at things with a critical eye. You need to talk back to these statistics and ask the questions. And, so that's part of it is it is very easy to manipulate data and to adjust graphs to make things look more dramatic than they are.
Yep. Oh, yeah, we've seen that big time. Using a different scale on either side with two lines you're putting together, and using a logarithmic scale to make it look like these changes are dramatic when in reality they're minuscule. That's happening in climate science big time.
Right.
And you see those statistics manipulated quite considerably. Now recently it has been to do with the vaccine tests and trials that were done, and realizing maybe some of that data was manipulated. Some of the race issues that we've had in our country with the sociological sciences, supposedly, they're reconsidering some of the data of that, realizing that, this was a completely falsified study because they were looking for a certain answer, and they looked for data that would support the answer instead of looking at the data for the answer.
Right.
Right. And I think that's maybe a difference in the philosophy of the person doing the studying.
One of the sites I try to refer my students to deals with ethics and statistics, and one of the statements they make is statistics are doing their greatest good. I'm going to kind of paraphrase this because I don't remember it exactly, but statistics are doing their greatest good when the benefit of mankind is the goal. And so when we're talking about whether it's, they're doing studies on medicines or vaccines, or that, we're trying to help mankind and not advance maybe some other type of agenda.
The bottom line of some biopharmaceutical company
right.
or something like that. So you've raised 3 boys. We're both in the 3 Boys Club.
Yeah.
My 3 sons. It used to be a TV show back in
the
hard day.
Fred McMurray.
Nobody knows about that show anymore. I don't even think it's on the internet.
It's not even on MeTV. I don't think
it wasn't worth putting on even on MeTV. But we have kind of been in that club, and our boys are very similar ages too. So they've been good buddies all the way through, and it's kind of cool to see them now finishing college. Nathaniel and Tim are both in law school and doing really well. And I don't know about you, but Tim is texting me all day, every day, Dad, we're learning this, and Dad, we're learning that. Like, his mind is just growing and expanding far beyond. I was able to hang with him pretty good the first year. Now I'm just Googling stuff on the side when he's texting me. Yes, I remember it well. Or I have to tell him, man, we didn't have that case when I was in law school. So it's kind of a fun experience to see them becoming men of their own. And that was always the goal. Yeah. But it's almost kind of hard to let them go in a way. This is in some ways a harder phase of life to see your kids go out and start making their own decisions, because you can still advise, but you kind of have to let them go. I don't know if you and Kathleen, I'm sure you did, when the boys were born, sort of dedicate them to the Lord and acknowledge that they belong to Him. But now it's time to put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
It's like that was a little easier when I still had daily custody, know. But now I have to really give them back to the Lord and really leave them in His hands. And so we're kind of in that same boat as it goes. And so it's been a good fellowship that we've had over the years too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of it is a bittersweet thing. I mean, you love just seeing God work in their lives, and you pray they make wise choices, and we're very thankful for, the impact that you had with Nathaniel in terms of questions about, okay, what do I do for this step of trying to get to a law school?
Right.
And
through the woods, trying to find where to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but it's fun.
And I, in terms of having adult children, I remember talking to a friend here, a little older than I am, and just talking about, you pray for your kids when they're young, certainly. But when they become young adults, you pray like never before.
All the time.
I mean, it is, and we're excited for them. And I'm, not saying that I'm, that our kids are like wild or bad kids, but you just pray for them, that they're making good choices. And these are such critical years that, they make so many key decisions and that are going to impact the rest of their lives.
I remember telling Tim as he was choosing a law school that, this one decision is going to chart a lot of the rest of your life, but in ways that you can't possibly predict right now. And so you're just going to have to trust the Lord and let him open the right doors, and trust him as you make the best decision, and trust him as you go through the law school experience and every step of the way. And that's kind of what you're talking about in your mission statement. You said it's to glorify God, serving him in my local church, which we've had the privilege to do together over the years, as a Christian man, as a husband, father, son, all those relationships and roles that God gives you. It is a little uncomfortable, though, to get to this final phase, and there's almost a sense of loss. I mean, we're gaining daughter-in-laws, and that's kind of fun,
absolutely.
And seeing them developing relationships and trying to guide them through that as well. But it is, and we're not quite to the grandchildren phase yet, because we're not old enough to be grandpas. That's why.
Right.
Okay, we're young, vital men, But as you look back, has it been a just perfectly planned out path as you saw everything unfolding in life? But of course not. But I know you've had some rough things you've gone through too. What have you gone through along those lines that the Lord's kind of helped to use to grow and teach you along the way?
I've had, when I was about in my early 30s, I went to a physical for my bus driver's license. To the school I was at in Georgia, they wanted all the coaches to know how to drive the bus.
Of course.
Of course, part of that is you have to get a physical every year or every 2 years. And after one of those, or at the end of one of those, the nurse listened to my heart and said, I'm going to let you be approved for 3 months, but you need to go see a cardiologist. And so...
This was early 30s?
This was, I think I was 32 maybe.
32.
Something like that. And so I went to a cardiologist, and that's when I learned that, my heart valve, my aortic valve, was bicuspid instead of tricuspid, and basically was going to need a replacement. So at age 34, I had a valve replacement, and I'm very thankful for the care that I got. That was actually done up at St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, which is the one with Mayo Clinic.
Oh, wow.
And
the best of the best, right?
Yeah. So I
that's awesome.
Amazing care. And so that was a temporary valve. It was a cow valve at the time, actually, they put in there.
You got cow parts?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And that was the decision at that time, because I didn't want to be on blood thinners. The cardiologist kind of advised, you have a kind of active lifestyle. You don't want to go on blood thinners yet. And
well, that had to be kind of knock you down a peg, because you've been an active guy all your life. Sports, has been almost part of your definition of your personal identity. And all of a sudden now I got a heart problem. I'm way too young for this. I can't be having open heart surgery. What in the world? And that would make you rethink a lot of things, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely a startling time. And and then I had that valve for 13 years and kept getting checkups. When you have a procedure like that, you have a cardiologist for the rest of your life. So,
hello, buddy.
I am thankful for my cardiologists. I've had really good ones.
That's not the kind of procedure they can just do like laparoscopically, right?
No.
I mean, they got to crack you open and go in all the way in, don't they?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
it was open heart surgery and
Yeah.
recovery time. And so in 2019, as they said, that valve's wearing out, so now you need a new valve. And that was about to be expected. I mean, those cow valves don't last
Everybody
indefinitely.
knows that. Yeah.
So
When's the last time you saw like a 40-year-old cow? Right?
Exactly.
Actually, I don't know. Somebody Google quick. What's the lifespan of a cow?
Yeah. Keep
Evidently
borrowing
about
from
13
them. Yeah.
years. So what kind do they put in after that?
So this was in 2019 then, over at Freighter. Got really good
Another
care
good
there.
one. Yeah.
But they put a metal valve in. So I've part metal in my heart. It's an aortic. I think they called it the onyx valve or something. And so that's supposed to last the rest of my life. But I need to take blood thinners. Since
that's the trade-off.
Since it's a metal valve, yeah. So
you got bionic parts.
Right. So
did you notice any like new abilities when they did that?
Well, they told me, I haven't noticed it as much, but like when you first get out of this surgery and you're recovering, you're going to hear this clicking in your heart.
Weird.
So
yeah,
you can actually, and I don't know if I just ignore it now or I haven't paid attention as much, but like when I first had it, I could hear this clicking, and that would
be kind of distracting when the ticking time bomb in my chest.
I'm laying down trying to take a nap on the couch, and I hear this click. So
yeah.
But
how did you get through that as a family? Your wife would be worried for you. You're thinking these thoughts yourself. You're going in for I've never been in for major surgery like that. My dad's gone in, and I know what that was like. But to be dealing with that personally, what did you do to get through that time?
Well, I just thank the Lord for the support that I had from my family, my wife, and sons. And the first heart surgery, our sons were quite young, so my mom and dad were also there to help, which was an incredible help. That we actually spent, I think, 4 days up there in Rochester, and so they were there with us, and I think it also helps when your surgeon talks to you and, they talk to you like, oh, this is just like changing a pair of shoes. You'll take a nap for this surgery. You'll come out, you'll be fine. So
he's like, I've done 6 of them already this week, Yeah, but it's my one and only here, Doc.
Yeah. So that helps when the medical personnel are very reassuring, that this is a very low risk surgery kind of thing, and
Oh, sure.
So that definitely was a blessing. And then the support of church family, support of Pastor Loggins, each time he was very he's just a very loving, caring pastor.
That's for sure.
And so yeah, it was just those were two challenging times, but I'm thankful for the recovery that the Lord gave me. Excellent rehab at Watertown Hospital after the one in 2019. I really had a good rehab leaders there, and so thankful that I feel fine. I really don't, on a day-to-day basis. The main reminder is I got to make sure I take my blood thinner at 9 p.m. every night, and
as long as you're diligent with that, it's pretty good.
As long as, and I go get my finger stuck, once a month.
But I would guess that that's a daily reminder that, yes, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, but our own mortality and our own, I hate to say weakness because we don't like to think of ourselves in that light as men, but there's a mortality. To this life, and those kinds of deep waters kind of can't help but remind us that time is limited, and we have to make the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're, every day that the Lord gives us is a gift, and we just pray that we use it for His glory. The other thing I will mention about the recent heart surgery in 2019, about a month prior to that is when the Lord took my dad home.
Yeah.
And that was, just very, one of those times, you get a phone call and you just totally don't expect to hear the words that you're hearing. It was my younger brother who had called me, and, but I'm just so thankful during that time just to continue to learn about the grace of God and how he can use those times in our lives, and just the reminder that his way is perfect. And that was a verse that was really special to me during those days, and it was, I believe it's Psalm 18:30, as for God, his way is perfect. And just very thankful for, you talk about what have been some hard times. I would say those would be some of the hardest, would be the heart surgeries, and then, when Dad went home to heaven, and, those would be probably some of the hardest days. But I'm just thankful for the people God put around us to bring encouragement and to speak truth to us. I think about, it was somewhere around that time, right before my dad passed, that I remember Dr. Marriott talking about, as we think about the challenges in our lives and we think about prayer requests, and it's really important also for us to ask God, what are you teaching me through this? How do you want me to grow as a believer during this time? Even though it's a difficult time, how can I grow more into the conforming, to the image of your Son through this?
Yeah. Some people are larger than life. They're just like these mythic figures of legend and things like that. And for a lot of us, your dad is one of those guys, along with most of the other guys you mentioned today that are coaches, Rich Akins, and, Coach Mo for so many years, and Coach Mal, and classroom and on the field. And yet, even though he's kind of this larger than life guy, he was your dad.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great privilege that was for you and your brothers and your mom, and just, I'm so thankful for his impact in my life too, and his godly example of how to be a Christian man.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think about it, like, you have become that guy in a new generation. I mean, you basically are Coach Mal. You basically are your dad, in the classroom, on the court, on the field. You've been a coach all these years. You've been in the classroom. You're in and around with the students, having that kind of impact. Those are big shoes to fill, man.
Yes, absolutely. Big shoes to fill.
But I mean, you are that guy. It's our turn, in a sense, to carry the mantle. And I'm not saying someday they'll be doing podcasts about us, but who could wish for such a thing? Okay, but man, to have actual impact in somebody's life, to where they'd look back and say, that person made a difference in my life for good, for the Lord's glory. Is that what you're in it for? Is that what it's all about?
Yeah, it's such a challenge. You hear people say I had a front row seat to this, and I think about my life. Quick stat: I'm 53. Okay, I've spent 46 out of 53 years on a Christian college campus.
You may graduate it someday.
7 years in Georgia. So the other part of my life was either Pillsbury or here. So
wow.
But talking about having a front row seat to godly servants, I'm so thankful for both of my parents, my mom and my dad. They were a team of servants. They would serve together, and definitely overwhelmed by the prospect. It's like, we're supposed to be that next generation. And, I remember seeing a friend kind of from our era a couple of years ago at a graduation, and he comes up to me and says, we're the old guys now. And, it was
It's not
after
a joke. It's reality.
It is, and as the Lord has taken some of these men home, Coach Akins, my dad, and Coach Terrell, it is true. It's, we need to embrace that opportunity.
And it's not, we're not copying them.
Right.
But there's a little bit of them in us.
Yeah.
A lot in you, but especially, but there's a sense in which we have to assume that role and be willing to intervene in the life of the students and to speak truth when it's not convenient and to try to help them become a better version of themselves because we believe in them and we're helping them. And so going out of your way and out of your comfort zone and out of what's just curricular in the classroom and looking beyond, because I would guess it was not necessarily the X's and O's on the play chart that influenced your life for eternity as much as it was the example of the man in front of you and those sort of between the plays interactions that were spoken and demonstrated. So using sports as a ministry, people talk about what a great classroom it is, just so many teachable moments. I'm very thankful for, the men that I mentioned and, using sports as a ministry. I think of Coach Peterson continuing to do that today. Yep. I think of my dad and other coaches who have taken mission trips. I had the privilege of going to Israel with my mom and my dad in 2012. Was just an amazing opportunity. I don't know who gave a green light to that one, but that was a crazy trip, wasn't it? And didn't you guys go to France too?
They went to France and Ireland. So they took a total of 3 trips over the years, and but that was using sports as a ministry. I think of Sunday night with Kevin Taylor at Calvary, and he mentioned my dad specifically, just the impact along with Larry Carlson and Dr. Budall. He mentioned those 3 guys, just the faithfulness, and that's the bigger picture, definitely. That yes, the content, the day-to-day things are important. The preparation to compete, all of that, but what's the bigger picture, and what you are 10 years from now as a young man. If God gives you a wife, what kind of a husband are you going to be? Those types of.
And you've got to start being that man now, or else that girl isn't going to give you the time of day. I've thought about that a lot when I was single, and I'm glad the Lord gave me that thought, because my wife would not have talked to me in my undergrad days, and so it was good timing on the Lord's part for that introduction. But legacy, living up to legacy, that is a big challenge, isn't it? Definitely. Hey, Phil Price, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to On Mission, a podcast produced by Maranatha Baptist University. If you're like me, the parent of a teenager right now, it seems the world has gone mad. Anti-God ideologies and liberal political philosophies dominate higher education. You're probably asking yourself, is there a college I can trust to build on my family's values in a biblical worldview? Thankfully, there is such a place. Maranatha Baptist University in Watertown, Wisconsin is dedicated to training young people to serve the Lord. MBU provides a safe environment to study, practice, and grow their faith, and develop lifelong relationships with Christian young people that share their biblical values. And you don't have to compromise one bit on the academic quality of your education to receive it from a Christian worldview. Find out more at mbu.edu. For information about our podcast guests and to listen to all the previous episodes, visit mbu.edu/podcast. Join us again next week as we examine what keeps leaders on mission.